Hello, BookTube, and welcome back to Cimmerian September, Michael K. Vaughan's rollicking great event about Conan, about all things Conan, Robert E. Howard's greatest creation. In the 2024 version of Cimmerian September, we are concentrating on Conan pastiches of one kind or another. Comic books. No one has yet dared to rewatch the horrible TV show. No one has dared yet to rewatch the horrible cartoon, Saturday morning cartoon. But also books. Lots and lots of Conan pastiche books, and it's been a lot of fun. Just a lot of fun. I love this mythos so much. I love this world of Conan so much. I ordinarily think of it as very much connected with summer. Mainly, well, in part because that's when I read all these things, also in part because it's often hot in Conan stories. And you would think maybe on paper, I might have thought that would make this time of year a little bit on the late side for Cimmerian September, but of course, the seasons have changed. It is roasting hot high summer here in Boston, so perfectly fine for Cimmerian September. And I've had a rocky month when it comes to Cimmerian September. You won't find a greater Michael K. Vaughan fan than myself, so of course I'm going to do Cimmerian September, but it's been a bit of a rocky month. A lot of the pastiches that I have read have been far worse than I remembered, far worse than I expected. But I'm determined to press on. I think for the rest of September, I'm going to avoid the L. Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter pastiches that started it all. I think I'm just going to avoid those. There's plenty of Conan stuff for me to look at without that. So last night, I threw a book on the pile. I am still fighting hard against the whirlpool of deadlines and word counts, but I threw a book on the pile and gave it a try. And this was a book by a famous author. So if an author would go on to be famous, I thought, I've had good experiences with this author, and so I'll give it a try. Again, it's a Conan pastiche novel I'm not sure I ever read. I'm pretty sure I would remember it. It's Conan the Magnificent by Robert Jordan. Who went on to fame and squintillions of dollars for the Wheel of Time series. And I don't know, I've never read any interviews, but I get the impression that Robert Jordan is a Conan fan. I get the impression that he fought for the right to write some of these pastiche novels. He wrote quite a few of them, enough to fill 2 big hardcover volumes. And in this one, a lot of these pastiche novels that I'm noticing reflect some of the pressing concerns of their day. The pressing concern at the back of this book is Islamic fundamentalism. It's never called that, of course, because it takes place thousands of years before the modern era. But there's an evil sorcerer who leads a movement and a bloodthirsty army of sword-wielding fanatics who say there is only one God and all other gods are false, and that they must be eliminated, and anyone who worships them must be eliminated. Which struck me while I was reading it this time around as a sort of cartoon reflection of the panic over Islamic fundamentalism that was in the news when this book was published. It might have been on Robert Jordan's mind. Fortunately, it doesn't take over the book. And Conan in this book is never out of character, which is also great. There are odd things that go on in here. Robert Jordan is clearly having a ball, which is wonderful and infectious. When he has 2 very different women fall in love with Conan or in lust with him or become obsessed with him. They're very different women. And he's stoically nonplussed by being at the center of this war of attention, which is neat. And that refrain, which is a comic refrain, is done well, unlike so much of the attempted comedy in The Wheel of Time. That comic refrain is done well, and it's consistent throughout the book. It lightens scenes when it should. I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed the fact that Conan seems as mystified as we are by that, which is great, because Conan is not a Lothario. He has an animal magnetism, let's just put it that way. Women do often find him irresistible, but he doesn't try at all along those lines. And he doesn't in this book either, which is really good. Robert Jordan in this book, really, the last Robert Jordan pastiche I read for Cimmerian September this year did not please me. This one did. The only thing wrong with it, was the ending, predictably enough, because things build and build and build throughout the book. There's a lot in this. There's a lot of world building in here. There's a lot of stuff in there that has nothing to do with Conan, which you would think would be the kiss of death for a Conan pastiche novel, but Jordan is such a pleasurable writer that I didn't mind at all. It reminded me, actually, obviously of the Wheel of Time, but it reminded me that when I was reading the Wheel of Time, and I don't know how many of you are ardent fans, I'm largely not welcome in fantasy booktube. I'm not hated. They don't want outsiders at all. Unless you make a channel that is completely dedicated to fantasy, they don't want you. They're not going to return your emails. They're not going to answer your comments, so that if there are 20 comments on a video, there'll be a reply from them to everyone but that. That's all right, I guess. Insular communities always strike me as very boring, but no offense is intended, so no offense is taken. So I don't imagine that many of those fanatics are watching this channel at all. So I don't have to worry about making incendiary comments about the Wheel of Time. I'm on record on this channel many times about the Wheel of Time and how appalling it gets as the books go on. It just there gets less and less happens for longer and longer page counts for all of the books until finally Robert Jordan dies, which is the only way that you could save the thing from this horrible death grip. And a much more talented writer comes on to actually make things happen. But reading this book reminded me that even when that was true, around the Bataan death marches of Wheel of Time Volume 7 or Volume 8, around there, those of you who are fans of the show, of the series will know that it's entirely possible that you would get a 700-page novel in which nothing happens. But it reminded me that when I was originally reading those volumes, I was enjoying them. I was incredibly frustrated by how little the plot was moving in any direction. But I enjoyed the page-by-page reading experience. Robert Jordan is a really pleasurable, companionable writer on the page. Really natural. I wish that his writing had, when he achieved fame and fortune, had a little bit more giddy up and go. But even so, boy, oh boy, did I get that in this book. Because it's even more noticeable in this book, because a Conan pastiche novel that takes you away from Conan ought to fail on that ground alone, regardless of what it takes you away to. And that it doesn't happen here. This was much better than the last Jordan Conan book that I read. Much more enjoyable. I don't know if that's Robert Jordan just broke my will the way he did with the Wheel of Time, or rather that I was just primed to enjoy what he's going to do. If you take random Conan pastiche novels from the 80s and strip all the attribution off them, Robert Jordan's will stick out. I think you'll know, if you're familiar with these things at all, I think you'll know that you're reading him. I'm not sure that I would know a Leonard Carpenter one. I would definitely know Andrew Offutt. Definitely. And, there aren't many, but Karl Edward Wagner is pretty distinctive as well. And I would argue John Maddox Roberts as well. Some of them no, though. But this I think I would have recognized. There's so much egregious world building going on here. And I was okay with it. Once I got into the rhythm of the story, once I get into telling the players without a scorecard, then I would get to the beginning of a chapter or the beginning of a section of a chapter in which Jordan is clearly signaling, okay, well, now I'm going to flex my writing fingers, crack my knuckles, and just expound on all this stuff that I've invented. And those of you who are here for swashbuckling Conan adventures, well, they'll be back. He'll be back. Once I hit a section like that, I just eased in for the read, and it was very enjoyable. So I'm sure that this isn't going to last, but for now, Conan the Magnificent, I kind of liked. I think it would mostly disappoint someone who's in a Conan pastiche novel just for Conan, but I wasn't, for whatever reason. I wasn't. Maybe this book was helped by Jordan's subsequent career. That could easily be. But I'm going to test that theory, because I'm not going to read. The natural impulse is to read another Robert Jordan book tonight. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to find somebody else to read. Maybe a reread. See how my own reading sensibilities have changed over the years. But I will do it, and I will report back. Thank you, BookTube.